Chapter 1925. Take a stroke of my sword. Saint Master. Palace Master Wu Luo and other experts from Abysmal Palace came next to Abysmal Saint Master. Abysmal Saint Master's face was pale. The aura from his body wasn't even comparable to an ordinary Sir God's. He looked at the arrogant man in the white robe with hatred but didn't dare to rage. He knew clearly that that man had the power to kill him easily. He was in great disbelief. Over the years, he had been on the third place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. Even Red Dragon King, who was on the second place, didn't care about Red Dragon King much, even though he was on a higher ranking than he was. He thought that only Emperor Bai could really be above him in the world. He had always thought so. But then, when he saw the arrogant man in the white robe that day, the pride in him had instantly vanished. It was obvious that he belittled the world. "Let's go," Abysmal Saint Master commanded with great difficulty. Then, he and everyone from Abysmal Palace left in a fix. The experts on the scene sighed emotionally at the sight. One should know that Abysmal Saint Master was behaving barbarically just a while ago. His terrifying power made everyone feel hopeless. In the blink of an eye, he had been severely injured and he couldn't even utter a single word before he left. The one who had led to the current situation was the arrogant man in the white robe who was the center of attention. Everyone was questioning from the bottom of their hearts with great curiosity, who the hell is this person? Everyone was curious about the identity of the arrogant man in the white robe. Senior Jian Wushuang instantly spoke with the intention to ask. However, the arrogant man in the white robe didn't turn to look at Jian Wushuang, but his gaze was fixed in another direction. Everyone looked in the direction where the arrogant man was looking. It was a vast void. However, at the end of the vast void, there was a faint black dot. Before everyone's gaze, the black dot continuously magnified. In the end, it appeared in front of everyone. The black dot was a human figure. He was in a grey robe and had white hair and white eyes. His skin was also terrifyingly fair. He was actually a man, but he had an enchanting appearance that put all women in Eternal Chaotic World to shame. Such an enchanting appearance with such fair skin, he looked rather different. The enchanting man with white hair and white eyes appeared in the void and the experts then held their breaths in silence again. Purple Moon Emperor's eyes dilated in shock again. Bai, Emperor Bai. The moment someone called his name, it instantly stirred a hubbub. Emperor Bai. He is Emperor Bai. The supreme existence in Eternal Chaotic World, Emperor Bai, who is widely acknowledged as the strongest, has come here personally. My goodness, what is going on today? Everyone was dumbfounded. Great Emperor, the experts on the top of the pyramid in Eternal Chaotic World. Every one of them were truly high and above, overlords of the sanctuaries. Such an existence was hard to be seen normally, but then, Abysmal Saint Master and Purple Moon Emperor had made an appearance one after another. Then, there was a mysterious, arrogant man in a white robe that dispersed boundless darkness with one glance and injured Abysmal Saint Master with one stroke. By then, even Emperor Bai had come to the scene personally. He was the legendary Emperor Bai, the true strongest one in Eternal Chaotic World. Legend. That is Emperor Bai. Jian Wushuang looked at the newcomer with surprise as well. He had never expected the high and mighty Emperor Bai to rush to this side of the void at such a crucial moment. Plus, the moment Emperor Bai appeared, his white eyes, that seemed to be able to see through everything in the universe, were fixed upon the arrogant man in the white robe. As the strongest one, Emperor Bai was clear about just how powerful the man in the white robe was. You are the strongest one in the world now? The arrogant man in the white robe remained towering in the void as he looked at Emperor Bai coldly. I dare not accept the honor. I wonder what your name is. Emperor Bai flashed a gentle smile and behaved politely. If you can withstand my sword stroke, you'll get to know my name, the arrogant man in the white robe replied. Withstand your stroke? I'd like to try, Emperor Bai smiled faintly. A simple conversation and everyone's eyes dilated in shock. The arrogant man in the white robe, who had injured Abysmal Saint Master with one stroke, was going to fight with Emperor Bai now? Retreat. Hurry up and fall back. The experts at the scene quickly retreated far away without hesitation. Even experts like Jian Wushuang, Emperor God Tianling, Gen quickly fall back at times like that. Even Purple Moon Emperor retreated without hesitation. They knew clearly that, no matter if it was Emperor Bai or the mysterious arrogant man in the white robe, they both had an extremely unrivaled power. Regarding the battle between the two, no great emperor dared to get involved. It was no different from courting death. In the vast void, the two human figures looked at one another 1,000,000 miles apart. In the expanse of the surrounding 1,000,000,000 miles, there was no one else. The experts from Lineage of Star and the remaining experts from the other two alliances had retreated far away. They were staring at the middle of the void with boundless excitement and anticipation, with their eyes wide open. Even Purple Moon Emperor was extremely looking forward to the battle. Finally, the arrogant man in the white robe, who was at the core of the void, lifted his hand while leaving the other behind his back. Then, he extended one finger and glided it at the void before him. The movement was like he was scribbling. It was casual but smooth. There was no sword intention or divine power that spread out. However, at the very moment he moved his fingers, Hong! Heaven and earth shook. From the middle of the void, the sky and earth started splitting apart. A huge crack appeared from nowhere. As everyone looked on in terror, the crack magnified at a terrifying speed. 100 miles, 1,000 miles, 10,000 miles, million miles. In the end, it covered an expanse of 100,000,000 miles. The 100,000,000 miles crack appeared and crossed the entire universe. The surrounding space, air, including spacetime, all elements in the universe became obsolete. In the entire universe, there was no other substance. There was a sword light that slowly lit. Very dim, an unnoticeable sword light. If it was on a normal day, the sword light would never attract anyone's attention. But then, the sword light was the only existing substance in the vast universe. It became the one and only. It became eternal. This stroke, Gen Wushuang, who was far away from the battlefield, saw the sword light that became the one and only, and his eyes lost focus. Chapter 1926 Emperor 13. Gen Wushuang was truly a sword cultivator. He possessed high comprehension level in sword principle. Then, when he saw the sword principle that the arrogant man in the white robe had performed, Gen Wushuang could only feel a brand new sword principle appeared before him. He had never thought that a stroke of sword could make all living things in the universe, including spacetime, disperse. A sword was a sword after all, a sharp weapon to kill enemy. But then, a sword wasn't as simple. The experts at the scene were attracted by the sword principle that the arrogant man in the white robe had used. The sword light was like the core of the universe. Looking at the sword light, there was a burst of light from Emperor Bai's eyes. Then, his face grew solemn as well. Rumble. There was an aura that soared up from Emperor Bai. The aura was overlooking everything in the universe. It was an aura that was high above the masses. It belonged to the strongest person in the universe. Emperor Bai was an expert in eternal chaotic world. It was an aura that belonged to him. At the same time, a huge golden shadow appeared from his body. The golden shadow was a golden emperor. He was 99,000 jong tall and 3,000 jong broad. His golden eyes looked at everything as though it was nothing. His gaze looked as though the universe should yield to him. Emperor Bai attacked. He slowly lifted his slender arm, then he clenched his fist tightly and punched. The golden emperor shadow punched too. His punch was powerful enough to push away chaotic. However, regardless of if it was Emperor Bai's punch or the arrogant man's sword light, there was no overflow of power. It felt so ordinary. The power control of both parties were at a shocking level. Then, the two parties collided directly. Once they collided, boundless power swept out. The surrounding tens of billions of miles were engulfed by boundless power. However, even though the power was appalling, there wasn't any loud bang, only noises that were made of compressing energy. The experts who were watching from afar thought they were far enough away. However, when the two attacks collided and let out their true power, boundless power affected them too. There was a strong gale that could tear the sky and no one could open their eyes under such strong wind. If there was one who could open his eyes, that only be Purple Moon Emperor. Purple Moon Emperor then looked terrified. Too strong, Too strong. Merely the power of the peripheral was already so strong, just how strong could the core power be? Purple Moon Emperor muttered. As a great emperor, he couldn't see the core scene on the battlefield. However, merely the power of the subsidiary was terrifying enough. He knew that if he were to be in the core of the battlefield with his power, he wouldn't be able to survive under such terrifying power. Vroom. A terrifying power lasted for more than a dozen breaths and finally dispersed. The surrounding experts then opened their eyes and looked at the core of the battlefield. At first glance, everyone felt their scalps go numb as though everything was going to explode. On the battlefield, the void covering hundreds of millions of miles disappeared entirely. Everything vanished. There was only boundless darkness and a terrifying black hole that swallowed everything. The black hole was still expanding at a terrifyingly fast speed. Space-time disappeared. Jian Wushuang muttered. In the expanse hundreds of millions of miles, everything turned into nothing in an exchange of blows. The outcome of the battle between Emperor Bai and the arrogant man in the white robe. Scary. Such terrifying battle power was unbelievable to Jian Wushuang. Maybe only the scene that he was seeing before the huge coffin in the independent space in the 8th layer, the scene of ancient war, could compare with its power favorably. Too powerful. The surrounding people exclaimed in surprise. Every one of them was in unprecedented shock. In the expanse that turned into nothing, at the location in the middle, there were two figures that towered there. To be able to take one of my strokes, you're not too shabby. The arrogant man in the white robe looked at Emperor Bai, but his gaze remained cold. Emperor Bai squinted his eyes, but he looked solemn. With one exchange of blows, he obviously could tell how powerful the other party was. Forget about the fact that it was the second era. Even if it were the first era, no one would be that powerful. Just like the supreme experts from the first era, Sword Emperor Dugu was known to be the first in sword principle in the first era. However, in Emperor Bai's eyes, even Sword Emperor Dugu at his peak wasn't as scary as the mysterious arrogant man in the white robe in front of him. The first era collapsed many years ago and only I survived. I am much stronger than before. If Sword Emperor Dugu appears in front of me again, I am confident enough to defeat him. However, the person in front of me, I am not sure at all. This person. There was a commotion in Emperor Bai's heart. You are Emperor Bai, right? The arrogant man in the white robe's voice rang again. Although you're only of chaotic realm, to explode power far beyond chaotic realm under the circumstance of being restrained, you are qualified to know my name. Listen, my name is Emperor 13. Emperor 13? The mysterious expert's name is Emperor 13? There were countless experts who were impressed and also remembered the name in their hearts. The owner of the name was a super expert that could fight against Emperor Bai directly. Emperor Bai's face was cold, but he didn't speak. He had never heard of Emperor 13. He had never heard of it after the first era. Hence, there was no doubt that Emperor 13 was definitely from ancient times. The secret skill that you just performed, although it was powerful, it is a pity that it isn't complete. I happen to have the complete set of the secret skills. If you want it, I can give it to you, Emperor God 13 said coldly. Emperor Bai's gaze was fixed. Of course, the condition would be that you have to look after this little guy for me for the time being. For no time. 10,000 years at most, Emperor 13 pointed at Jian Wushuang behind him. Sure, Emperor Bai nodded. Then, Emperor 13's cold face revealed a faint smile. He then turned and vanished into thin air. This is Emperor Bai saw, and his eyes dilated in shock, its consciousness embodiment. Chapter 1927 Jian Wushuang and Emperor Bai. Consciousness embodiment. Different from consciousness incarnation. The incarnation was merely made of consciousness but not any other power. It was only consciousness. However, consciousness embodiment had a certain level of fighting power, and one's fighting power would be related to a person's personal power and strength. Emperor Bai knew some experts from ancient times who were extremely powerful would form consciousness embodiment and go on war. However, he never expected that Emperor 13, who he had to go all out to deal with, was merely a consciousness embodiment. His consciousness embodiment was already this powerful. What if he came personally? Experts from ancient times. Emperor Bai clenched his pale fist. The surrounding experts saw that Emperor 13 suddenly disappeared and they were confused. Especially Jian Wushuang. He had no idea why would Emperor 13 suddenly lend him a helping hand. Theoretically, he should have nothing to do with Emperor 13. Previously, he had interrupted the other party in ancient battlefield. Theoretically, even if he were to kill him directly, there wouldn't be any misunderstanding. But in the end, not only would Emperor 13 not kill him, but he also left a mark in his body. When he was in danger, Emperor 13 revealed himself to save him. Not only saving him, Emperor 13 even struck a deal with Emperor Bai to take care of him before he left. It was obvious that only one would do that if they were related. But honestly speaking, Jian Wushuang didn't even know who Emperor 13 was. He only knew that he came from ancient times. Besides that, he knew nothing. Swoosh. Then, there was a figure that moved and appeared next to Emperor Bai. Mr. Emperor Bai, Purple Moon Emperor greeted politely. They were both great emperors. However, when Purple Moon Emperor was talking to Emperor Bai, it was like a Sir God or Emperor God speaking to a great emperor. It was very normal. Although Emperor Bai was in Great Emperor realm, his power had surpassed Great Emperor. I just got here and I have no idea about what happened earlier. You tell me. Emperor Bai glanced at Purple Moon Emperor. Yes, Purple Moon Emperor nodded and immediately told him everything he knew briefly. It included how barbaric Abysmal Saint Master was. He didn't care how Purple Moon Emperor stopped him but attacked Jian Wushuang directly. It also included how Abysmal Saint Master had destroyed his consciousness incarnation. Of course, he also told Emperor Bai the scene where the mysterious arrogant man in the white robe, Emperor 13, was defeated Abysmal Saint Master. Is that so? Emperor Bai heard and nodded faintly. Then, his pair of white eyes looked around. The war stops here now. Everyone go back to where you come from. Emperor Bai's voice was filled with authority. All the experts at the scene heard and didn't dare to go against his command. They bowed at Emperor Bai politely, one after another, and immediately left. When the two alliances left, there wasn't unwillingness and they were glad. After all, they were already defeated. If they were to continue to fight, Lineage of Star would only massacre them. Just as the experts from the two alliances left. Jian Wushuang, I wanted to make a trip to Lineage of Star. Will you welcome me? Emperor Bai looked at Jian Wushuang. Emperor Bai came personally. You bring radiance to Lineage of Star. How can I refuse? Please. Jian Wushuang wasn't arrogant nor inferior. Under the lead of Jian Wushuang, Emperor Bai and Purple Moon Emperor immediately walked to Lineage of Star. In the middle of Universe Galaxy, in the lair of Lineage of Star, where Jian Wushuang resided, Sword Star. In the lofty hall, there were only Jian Wushuang and Emperor Bai. As for the others, including Purple Moon Emperor, they were waiting outside. Jian Wushuang and Emperor Bai were sitting opposite one another while Emperor Bai held a cup of tea and sipped but never spoke. Jian Wushuang looked humble but not fearful. After a while, Emperor Bai finally put down the cup of tea. The pair of strange white eyes looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, how long have you been in the state of ultimate real God? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Ultimate real God, such a title, he had never told anyone. Because Emperor Bai was like him, an inverse cultivator, he knew it naturally. It has already been tens of thousands of years, Jian Wushuang replied. Only tens of thousands of years. Emperor Bai smiled faintly. Back then, real God Wu Bei was in ultimate real God stage much longer than you have been. He had been at the peak of ultimate real God stage for a very long time, and during that time, he requested to see me so many times and intended to obtain the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill from me. It was a pity that I never wanted to see him. Do you know why? Jian Wushuang shook his head. The 6th step of inverse cultivation skill was given to him by real God Wu Bei. He had once talked to real God Wu Bei as well and he knew how helpless real God Wu Bei felt. Real God Wu Bei had paid a great price in order to get the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill, but he had never got to see Emperor Bai even once before he died. I was not willing to see him because he was too weak, Emperor Bai replied coldly, although he passed all 3 inverse cultivation tests and also reached the peak of ultimate real God. However, Besides his identity, his comprehension towards doctrine and his opportunity to learn secret skill was extremely ordinary. Even if I were to pass him the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill for him to break through and reach almighty level, he would at most possess the fighting power of a great emperor, or maybe even only be at the bottom of one. Because that was his limit. Such fighting power would be too weak. To the entire eternal chaotic world, there would be almost no influence at all. If so, why would I want to see him? Why would I want to pass him the skill? Jian Wushuang was stunned and he was surprised. Real God Wu Bei's comprehension level wasn't high, nor did he have a lot of opportunities. Jian Wushuang knew about that. However, Emperor Bai wasn't willing to pass real God Wu Bei at the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill because he didn't have high potential, which was something Jian Wushuang didn't expect. Real God Wu Bei's talent was ordinary, but you are different. Emperor Bai looked at Jian Wushuang. You are very talented. You are stronger than I am and you are very fortunate. You carried a lot of opportunities on you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have countless trump cards and skills. If you were to break through and become an almighty, you could totally achieve something like me, if not become stronger. You would be extremely helpful to eternal chaotic world. Hence, I can give you the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill but only under one condition. Chapter 1928 Emperor Bai's Condition. Emperor Bai, go ahead, Jian Wushuang was excited. The 7th step of inverse cultivation skill was the crucial factor of him becoming the strongest person in eternal chaotic world. Without the skill, no matter how great his skills and trump cards were, he wouldn't be able to compare with a true great emperor after all. However, with the skill, he can then try to break through and become an almighty. By then, he could easily reach great emperor level. He might even stand a chance to compare favorably with Emperor Bai. Hence, regardless of the price he had to pay in order to get the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill, he'd do it. Jian Wushuang had already made up his mind. As long as the conditions that Emperor Bai suggested didn't go against his principles, he would figure out a way to get it done no matter how difficult it was. The first condition is that I have to receive the inheritance of secret skill of Star Palace, Emperor Bai said directly. The secret skill of Star Palace, Jian Wushuang stunned. Emperor Bai is also interested in the secret skill of Star Palace? The secret skill is extremely unique. It is also extremely helpful to Great Emperor. Previously, I couldn't use it. But now, it's different, Emperor Bai said, but he didn't explain much. Jian Wushuang thought for a while and asked, Mr. Emperor Bai, I'd like to clarify if the secret skill of Star Palace is for you alone to cultivate or Emperor Bai intends to spread the secret skill widely, for the experts from Sanctuary Alliance to cultivate it. Lineage of Star obtained the secret skill of Star Palace relying on your own opportunity. Hence, it belongs to Lineage of Star alone. I wouldn't make Lineage of Star to announce the secret skill to the world. I only wanted to cultivate it myself, Emperor Bai answered. Then, there's no problem, Jian Wushuang agreed straight away. The secret skill of Star Palace was the biggest advantage and trump card that the experts and disciples from Lineage of Star had. If it wasn't necessary, Jian Wushuang wouldn't wish to spread the secret skill wide to the point that everyone knew it. Then, Lineage of Star would lose their advantage. However, if it was only Emperor Bai alone, there was no difference. Just like guest elders in Lineage of Star, Jian Wushuang promised to let them cultivate the secret skill of Star Palace as well. After this war, the 3 alliances are defeated. Almighty's alliance is even long gone. Lineage of Star could consider yourself a great victory. If I am not mistaken, you would be dealing with the other 2 alliances later on, right? Emperor Bai asked. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. No matter if it was Star Extermination Alliance or Supreme 10 Alliance, they came at Lineage of Star with a goal to root us out, especially Star Extermination Alliance. Back on Starland, they advanced and consolidated at every step to destroy Lineage of Star's foundation. They didn't want to leave Lineage of Star any chance. Now that Lineage of Star has passed through the calamity, I, of course, have to wait until I settle everything before I deal with them. I believe anyone would do the same as I do. You're right. The 2 alliances took the initiative to attack Lineage of Star and it is only right and proper that you take revenge on them. However, My second condition is for Lineage of Star to not attack the two alliances for now, Emperor Bai said. Why? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Because the current situation is unusual, Emperor Bai looked. You know clearly that the existence of Sanctuary Alliance is to match against star demons in the 8 layers, Hidden Forces, Holocaust Sect, and also Akron Palace. The two major dark forces were originally forced to hide in the dark by Sanctuary Alliance. They were like rats on the streets and they didn't date to reveal themselves. Over the years, the two hidden forces started preparing for an attack. Not too long ago, Sanctuary Alliance received news that Holocaust Sect went through a drastic change and they were united by someone else ruling with an iron fist. On top of that, the actions of Akron Palace for the past years. I'm afraid, in no time, eternal chaotic world will be in chaos again. Sanctuary Alliance might come across a tragic war. At such a crucial moment, Sanctuary Alliance naturally has to figure out a way to maintain our power. Emperor Bai paused and continued, this time, the war between the three alliances and Lineage of Star, no one expected Lineage of Star to win a great victory. You even broke Star Extermination Alliance apart and made Almighty's alliance vanish into thin air. After this war, Almighties who passed away were more than 150 of them. To Sanctuary Alliance, it is a great loss. If both parties were to continue, it would only expend more of Sanctuary Alliance's fighting power. While an oyster and a kingfisher were engaged in a bitter tussle, a fisherman came along and carried them both off. In other words, the two dark forces benefit from it. Emperor Bai, I understand what you mean, Jian Wushuang's voice was deep, but the war isn't instigated by Lineage of Star. We are being taunted and bullied. Now that we finally passed the calamity and stand a chance to counterattack, you want Lineage of Star to hold back? Jian Wushuang was unwilling. Not just him, but all experts in Lineage of Star were also aggrieved. They were only waiting for Jian Wushuang's command until they counterattacked the two alliances. If Jian Wushuang were to tell them to stop the war then, there might be a lot of people who were unhappy. I know that Lineage of Star is upset. But the current situation didn't allow you to continue the war. On top of that, although both alliances lost many experts in the war, their foundation is still solid. If they continued to work together, their fighting power would still be magnificent. If Lineage of Star were to leave the galaxy formation and enter their lairs to fight, the match would be hard to call. In the end, both parties might be in a stalemate situation. Sanctuary Alliance wouldn't allow that. I brought up the condition in order to provide Lineage of Star an opportunity to step out from a difficult position. You can announce to the outside world that you and I reached a mutual agreement that you have to stop for now. If Sanctuary Alliance were to get involved, it wouldn't be taken care of so easily, Emperor Bai said. Jian Wushuang's face grew in distress. He also knew Sanctuary Alliance's concern. If it was an ordinary period, it wouldn't matter if Lineage of Star were to continue to fight against the two alliances. Sanctuary Alliance wouldn't be bothered. But it was different then. Jian Wushuang, you actually really didn't have to continue the war. Even if you were to continue to fight, there wouldn't be any other result. You should know that there are some forces among the two alliances that have deep-rooted foundations. Some are even associated with the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance. For instance, Abysmal Palace has Abysmal Saint Master as their backer. Soaring Heaven King Palace also has Colored Glaze Emperor to lead for them. With great emperors involved, Lineage of Star can't destroy them. You might as well take the time to increase your power. After some time, when Eternal Chaotic World finally settles down, I reckon you should be an almighty by then and your power should be able to compare favorably with the great emperors, or even with mine. By then, it'd be much easier if you wanted to destroy the two alliances and Sanctuary Alliance definitely wouldn't say much, Emperor Bai said. Chapter 1929 Friendly. Hearing what Emperor Bai said, Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. He felt that Emperor Bai was right. Although Lineage of Star had won a great victory in the war, the two alliances would still possess fierce power if they were to reconstruct their teams. If Lineage of Star were to fight against the two alliances outside the galaxy formation, Lineage of Star really wouldn't stand much chance. As for destroying the major forces, it really was impossible. Emperor Bai, I promise you that lineage of star will not find trouble with the two alliances for now. However, if the two alliances were to find trouble with us, you couldn't blame me for that, Jian Wushuang said. Don't worry. As long as the two alliances aren't dumb, they should know what to do. Plus, Sanctuary Alliance will definitely send great emperors to give them warning personally, Emperor Bai said with a smile. Emperor Bai paused and continued, the last condition, I'd like to know where did Emperor 13 come from and how is he related to you? Emperor 13? Jian Wushuang was stunned, then he flashed a bitter smile. Emperor Bai, to be frank with you, Emperor 13 and I merely met once and we are not related to each other at all. However, when we first met, I am not sure why but he left a mark in my body. This time, when I am in danger, he rushed over to me via the mark. As for his origins and why he helped me, I really have no idea. Jian Wushuang was stating the truth. He really didn't know anything about Emperor 13. The only thing that he knew was that Emperor 13 was an ancient expert and he was from the ancient battlefield in his hometown. However, he would definitely not tell Emperor Bai about the ancient battlefield located in his hometown. I see, Emperor Bai creased his eyebrows. Emperor 13 is definitely a super expert from ancient times. He would save you and urge me to take care of you. It meant that he was related to you but you have no idea why. Forget it. Ancient time was a secret to begin with. The ancient experts were mysterious. Emperor Bai smiled faintly. From his reply, it was obvious that he had once met an ancient expert and probably more than one. Jian Wushuang, as you agreed with all the conditions that I brought up, I shall give you the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill. Emperor Bai said as he flipped his hand and took out a grey bead. Jian Wushuang's heart quivered at the sight of the grey bead. He was very familiar with the grey bead. From the beginning of cultivation skill until every step of inverse cultivation skill, they were all contained in a grey bead. The grey bead was extremely mysterious and Jian Wushuang had yet to find out what mysterious raw material the grey bead made of. The 7th step of inverse cultivation skill is in the bead. Take a look, Emperor Bai passed the grey bead to Jian Wushuang directly. Jian Wushuang took it and briefly went through it. He was thrilled. He knew that it was really the 7th step of the inverse cultivation skill. Thank you Emperor Bai, Jian Wushuang quickly thanked. You're welcome, Emperor Bai waved his hand. Emperor Bai, let me bring you to Lineage of Stars Scripture Depository to accept the inheritance of secret skill of Star Palace, Jian Wushuang said. All right, Emperor Bai nodded. Under Jian Wushuang's lead, Emperor Bai arrived at Scripture Depository and started receiving the inheritance of secret skill of Star Palace. Very soon, Emperor Bai walked out from Scripture Depository after inheritance had been completed. Emperor Bai, how did it go? Jian Wushuang asked with a smile. Secret skill of Star Palace is unfathomable. Although I received all 3 volumes, I'm afraid I could only cultivate the first volume, Emperor Bai smiled faintly. Emperor Bai could only cultivate the first volume as well. Jian Wushuang was surprised. It was as though everyone found it difficult to cultivate the secret skill of Star Palace. Most of them could only cultivate the first volume. Some couldn't even cultivate the first volume after they received the inheritance. As for the Master of Star Palace, he absorbed a drop of blood essence that belonged to an expert of 7 Star Black sect by chance. Hence, he successfully cultivated the second volume. However, Jian Wushuang didn't find the secret skill difficult. When he cultivated it, it could be considered smooth sailing. He had even cultivated the third volume. It inevitably made Jian Wushuang felt surprised. After Emperor Bai had received the inheritance, he didn't stay back any longer. In the galaxy, the experts from Lineage of Star, led by Jian Wushuang, came to farewell Emperor Bai. Jian Wushuang, this is my communication token. If you come across any problem in the future, you can send me a message. Emperor Bai gave Jian Wushuang his communication token before he left. The surrounding experts were surprised at the sight. Especially Purple Moon Emperor, he felt a complicated feeling and he was looking at Jian Wushuang in jealousy. One should know that Emperor Bai was the strongest person in Sanctuary Alliance and he was always aloof and set himself high. The experts from Sanctuary Alliance, including the Great Emperors, only 2 or 3 of them had his communication token. Great emperors on the bottom of the level, like Purple Moon Emperor, never once had it. If he were to be looking for Emperor Bai, he had to look for someone to pass the message. But then, Jian Wushuang had received Emperor Bai's communication token. Plus, Emperor Bai was normally cold to others, even to great emperors. However, he was extremely friendly to Jian Wushuang. Purple Moon Emperor was even more confused. After Emperor Bai left, Purple Moon Emperor immediately came forward. Jian Wushuang, congratulations. Emperor Bai's communication token, even I don't have it. Purple Moon Emperor smiled and his attitude was entirely different from before. When he had been talking to Jian Wushuang earlier, he had referred to himself with an honorable pronoun. Then, he had only referred to himself as I. Purple Moon Emperor, you must be joking. I am only lucky. Plus, Emperor Bai seems to be an easy person to talk to. Jian Wushuang smiled. An easy person? Purple Moon Emperor smiled awkwardly. Jian Wushuang really found Emperor Bai friendly and easy to talk to. At least, during their conversation earlier, Emperor Bai didn't put on bureaucratic airs, nor did he impose anything on him. For instance, Emperor Bai could make Lineage of Star hand him the secret skill of Star Palace with one order. For Lineage of Star and the two alliances to stop the war, it could also be only ordered by Emperor Bai. However, Emperor Bai didn't force the order but traded with him for the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill. Even when he told Jian Wushuang to stop Lineage of Star from fighting with the two alliances, he weighed the pros and cons on Jian Wushuang's behalf and let Jian Wushuang make the final decision. Then, Emperor Bai took the initiative to give him his communication token. Even Jian Wushuang was surprised himself. Could it be because Emperor 13 wanted Emperor Bai to take care of me, and that's why Emperor Bai is gentle to me? Jian Wushuang was confused. That's not right. Although Emperor 13 is powerful, there's no need to curry favor with me, right? Chapter 1930 in peace. Although Jian Wushuang was confused, he didn't bother to think about it further. Sword Emperor, everything is settled and I shall bid you farewell, Purple Moon Emperor said. Thank you, Great Emperor, for helping. Jian Wushuang and Lineage of Star will remember this. Jian Wushuang expressed his gratitude. Haha, don't mention it. Purple Moon Emperor let out a hearty laugh, then he turned to leave. As for Chen Mingzi, he naturally followed Purple Moon Emperor. Hall Master Yuan, Jian Wushuang looked at Hall Master Yuan by the side, send down an order. Tell the experts of Lineage of Star to take back Starland. Yes, Hall Master Yuan nodded. Palace Master, how about the two alliances? Hall Master Naiyun asked. The two alliances retreated and the war has ended for now, Jian Wushuang answered. Ended? We are letting the two alliances off the hook just like that. Hall Master Naiyun's eyebrows were tightly knitted and there was obviously reluctance in their eyes. Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Jiyushin were upset too. Although Lineage of Star had won a great victory in the war, the two alliances weren't wiped off. Could it be because of Sanctuary Alliance? Hall Master Yuan turned to look at Jian Wushuang. Not only because of Sanctuary Alliance, but also because Eternal Chaotic World isn't peaceful for a while, Jian Wushuang said calmly, I have already reached a mutual agreement with Emperor Bai. Lineage of Star will stop fighting with the two alliances for now. After some time, when Eternal Chaotic World regains its stability, we will fight with them again. I understand, Hall Master Yuan nodded. Go ahead, Jian Wushuang waved. Although the two alliances aren't wiped out, Lineage of Star has survived the war and our danger has been resolved. The skies clear up after a storm. After this war, Lineage of Star will reach a brand new level after all. Most importantly, from today, there won't be anyone in Eternal Chaotic World who dares to cast greedy eyes over the secret skill of Star Palace in Lineage of Star. Lineage of Star will truly be in peace now. Sanctuary Alliance and all forces in Eternal Chaotic World had been watching after Lineage of Star and the three alliances. On the day when the three alliances finally fought with Lineage of Star. At first, almost everyone was certain that Lineage of Star would be destroyed and wiped out, without a chance to struggle. However, when the end result was announced, everyone found it unbelievable. The three alliances had been defeated. They were crushed. Star Extermination Alliance, who had attacked first, were defeated by Lineage of Star. There were almost 70 Almighties of them, but only less than 20 survived in the end. Supreme 10 Alliance did slightly better. Although quite a number of their Almighties were killed in the process of running away, it was much better compared to Star Extermination Alliance. The most tragic one would be Almighties Alliance. Almighties Alliance, that was made of more than 100 Almighties, should be the strongest among all three alliances. But in the end, Almighties Alliance vanished into thin air. All experts had died and not one survived. Unbelievable. The result was entirely beyond one's expectation. Even the great emperors in Sanctuary Alliance didn't expect it would be so. Of course, the process of the war was gradually announced. Lineage of Star displayed their terrifying power and the true power of Universe Galaxy. Especially Jian Wushuang's shocking stroke. One stroke destroyed the entire Almighties Alliance. Is that a joke? Hundreds of Almighties were massacred by Sword Emperor's one stroke. That's too scary. Sword Emperor is so scary. He's simply a demon. Countless people were astonished. They yielded because of the terrifying stroke that Jian Wushuang had revealed. Then, Great Emperor came personally to wipe out everything. Just as Jian Wushuang was in a desperate situation, a mysterious expert suddenly took action. With one glance, the boundless darkness dispersed. One stroke and it shattered Abysmal Saint Master's defense armor, which led to severe injury of Abysmal Saint Master. If it wasn't because Abysmal Saint Master wasn't qualified enough, he would be long dead in the person's hands. Then, Emperor Bai came personally and had an exchange of blows with the mysterious expert. Hundreds of millions of miles vanished. Such a terrifying scene struck fear into everyone. No one expected that the war that was originally suppressed, the war that had no suspense, suddenly had such a drastic change from nowhere. But, regardless of the process, the result was confirmed. After the war, everyone understood that there was no one in Eternal Chaotic World that could pose a threat to Lineage of Star. The people who harbored deep-seated resentment and cast greedy eyes over secret skill of Star Palace, no matter how great their resentment or their greed was, they wouldn't dare to attack Lineage of Star. Just like the two remaining alliances, they immediately retreated to their old lair after the war and didn't dare to attack Lineage of Star again. Such a scene reminded people of Master of Star Palace's massacre when he was cornered by various forces many years ago. Back then, because of the Master of Star Palace's massacre, the forces in Eternal Chaotic World had been deterred. As long as the Master of Star Palace was alive, there were no forces who dared to attack Lineage of Star. But then, the war played an even greater deterrent force to Eternal Chaotic World. Not only were there more experts that had passed away, but also because of the terrifying stroke that Jian Wushuang performed. Most importantly, even when a great emperor attacked, Abysmal Saint Master, who was a great emperor in third place, left with a severe injury. Who would have the guts to move Lineage of Star? Just as all forces were still astonished, the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance showed the change on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking List. On Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking List there was no change for the top 15 great emperors. Everyone knew about the mysterious expert that had appeared in the war, Emperor 13. However, because Emperor 13 was too mysterious and his background was too unique, even though he was on par with Emperor Bai or even more powerful than Emperor Bai, he wasn't listed on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking List. On the contrary, the ranking below the great emperors were drastic. There was no choice. There were too many experts that had died in the war in Universe Galaxy. There were many emperor gods from Almighty's alliance that were killed by Jian Wushuang. Hence, the change was drastic. Then, the ranking below Great Emperor on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking List was as such. The 16th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking List was still Underworld God. There was no doubt about it. Even though, regardless of if it were Jian Yi or Emperor God Tianling, they had displayed fighting power that could be compared to Underworld God favorably, they had never fought after all. On top of that, Underworld God was widely acknowledged previously. If there wasn't any battle achievement, it wouldn't change Underworld God's ranking. The 17th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking List was Jian Wushuang. Chapter 1931. All parties surged. Jian Wushuang, Sword Emperor, the 17th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. He was second to Underworld God. When it was announced, even Jian Wushuang was surprised. One should know that although he was powerful, it was a little forceful to say that he was second to Underworld God among Emperor Gods. Forget about the others, Jian Yi and Emperor God Tianling were already stronger than him. Plus, the boatman in black that Jian Wushuang had met on the way back from Emperor Sword Sect was also stronger than him. I'd like to see why the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance arranged themselves as such, Jian Wushuang muttered and continued to read. Sword Emperor once performed a shocking stroke and killed over 100 Almighties from Almighty's alliance. No one below Great Emperor rank could withstand the power of the one stroke. After the display of the shocking stroke, he was cornered by Abysmal Saint Master. At that crucial moment, he gave his all and launched a hit that could be compared favorably to a great emperor's. His trump cards were impressive. Plus, before he used any trump cards, he once fought against 3 peak emperor gods alone and he had the upper hand. On top of that, he soul-controlled an expert with immeasurable skill, Jian Yi. With everything mentioned above, it is determined that Jian Wushuang's overall power could challenge an Underworld God's. The moment he launches his trump card, even Underworld God will have to move away. Hence his ranking on the 17th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. On the brand new Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, the reason why Jian Wushuang was on that ranking was listed clearly. Hence, no one had the guts to doubt him. Even, there were some who thought the higher-ups of Sanctuary Alliance had ranked Jian Wushuang too low. He should be above Underworld God. After all, even Underworld Gods had to avoid if they were to come across an Almighty's alliance that was made of over 100 Almighties. However, Jian Wushuang wielded his sword and killed everyone with one stroke. The terrifying stroke made everyone yield. Naturally, no one had any opinion about the ranking. It was Jian Wushuang himself who felt sheepish. Because he had performed the terrifying stroke by putting the 3rd volume of Secret Skill of Star Palace to play all together. The 3rd volume of Secret Skill of Star Palace wasn't easy to perform. After performing it once, it would require a long time until he could perform it the 2nd time. Putting the 3rd volume of Secret Skill of Star Palace aside, he reckoned his other trump cards wouldn't enable him to match Underworld God evenly. However, it wasn't false that Jian Yi was soul-controlled. Soul control was considered one of his skills as well. If he were to fight alongside Jian Yi, he might stand a chance to pose a threat to Underworld God. After all, Jian Yi was an expert from ancient times. After he revealed his terrifying fighting power in Universe Galaxy, the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance had already listed him on the 18th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. Just below Jian Wushuang. After Jian Yi, it was followed by Emperor God Tianling. That was normal. Those who partook in that way knew that Emperor God Tianling gave his all when he had fought with Jian Yi, but in the end, Jian Yi had the upper hand. It was obvious that Jian Yi was slightly stronger than Emperor God Tianling. The ranking among the top few peak Emperor Gods changed and the ranking of the other peak Emperor Gods and ordinary Emperor Gods was even higher. However, Jian Wushuang merely went through it simply but didn't bother much. He broke 7 stars in the earlier battle and the power of ancient tribe bloodline was exhausted. He would require time to slowly recover. King of Venomous Worms, for the rest of this time, I'll have to depend on you, Jian Wushuang smiled. I'll try my best, King of Venomous Worms replied. The current King of Venomous Worms found it hard to assist Jian Wushuang in fighting his enemies on the level of peak Emperor God. However, his recovery power had still played a major factor. His recovery power was Jian Wushuang's biggest reliance. In boundless darkness, in the void that had no light, there was a dark palace floating. In the depth of the dark palace, on a lofty throne, there was a figure in a black robe that slowly appeared. The figure in the black robe had a pale face and his aura was spiritless. It was Abysmal Saint Master. There was armor floating in front of Abysmal Saint Master. However, it was obvious that the armor was forcefully put together by shattered pieces. No way, forget about putting them back together. Even if I were to refine it entirely, the power of the armor would be diminished greatly. D*mn it. Abysmal Saint Master clenched his hand and there was billowing hatred in his eyes. He had paid a great price to get the armor from ancient Mysteryland, but it had broken apart straight away. Emperor 13. D***M Emperor 13. Just you wait. I can't do anything about you now, but it is only a matter of time until I peel your skin and break your bones. I'll let you know that letting me go is a great mistake. Not only you, but also Emperor Bai and Jian Wushuang. One day, I will step on all of you. I definitely will. Abysmal Saint Master roared in madness. As his bellow spread, there were a few flames that soared into the air in darkness. In the huge estate that looked like a human paradise. On the calm river, a boat was drifting casually. On the boat, there was a lazy man in a purple robe fishing with his bamboo rod. At the same time, he was listening to the report of a beautiful woman in a purple robe behind him. Master, this is news from Lineage of Star, the beautiful woman in a purple robe said politely. They are defeated. The lazy man looked surprised. Abysmal took action himself but didn't get to kill Jian Wushuang. Abysmal is such rubbish. It wasn't because Abysmal Saint Master was not powerful. The crucial part is that a mysterious expert, Emperor 13, helped Jian Wushuang and he was too powerful. Abysmal Saint Master couldn't even take one stroke. Even when Emperor Bai attacked, he didn't manage to score before the mysterious expert. If I'm not mistaken, Emperor 13 should be an expert from ancient times, the beautiful woman in the purple robe said. An expert from ancient times? The lazy man was surprised. As it involves ancient times, it isn't something I can take care of. Report this to Demon King. He might know the origins of Emperor 13. Then, the lazy man continued to fish. The beautiful woman in the purple robe nodded and disappeared from the boat. In the darkest place in eternal chaotic world. Goo. There was a large amount of black river water that covered the entire universe. The river was like the Netherland. The Black River water was like the water in the Netherland. This was the core of Akron Palace. In the middle of the boundless netherworld, there was a floating island and there was a pavilion towering on the island. In the depths, there was a pitch-black tower. The tower was huge but there was only one level. Chapter 1932 The Number One Force in Sanctuary Alliance. In the tower, there was a huge bronze statue towering. The bronze statue was over 1,000 jong tall and he was wearing a bronze mask. He had a total of 8 hands and the 8 hands were holding various weapons tightly. In front of the green bronze statue, it happened to be a figure in white robe knelt there politely. He had been kneeling there for 6 hours. Finally, there was a faint change in the bronze statue. On top of the statue, the only place the mask didn't cover was a pair of eyes and they slowly looked down. I should say this before. If there isn't anything important, don't disturb me, a deep, old voice reverberated in the tower. Demon King, there is a mysterious expert in eternal chaotic world. He should be like you, has also from ancient times. His name is Emperor 13, the person in a white robe was still kneeling politely. Oh, Emperor 13? He humphed. Is there a mirror image of how he fought? There is. The white-robed person waved and immediately there was a mirror image that appeared in the tower. In the mirror image, Emperor 13 attacked and defeated Abysmal Saint Master with ease. Then, there was a scene when Emperor Bai fought. When he watched the scenes in the mirror image, the pair of eyes on the top of the bronze statue dilated in shock. It's him. An old voice asked with a tinge of shock. Demon King knew this person? The person in white robe couldn't help but ask. Yeah, of course, I do. Emperor 13? Haha, it's a great name. But that's not right. It should be his name before he got famous or a name that he gave himself when he wandered outside. The ancient voice resounded smilingly. This person is a big figure. A shocking figure. There were countless experts that partook in the life-destroying war back then. There were many that possessed great skills. Among the countless experts that partook in the war, this person's power could be in the top 5. What? The person who was kneeling down suddenly lifted her head and revealed an enchanting lady's appearance. Then, there was shock in her beautiful eyes. Top 5. In the ancient times war, his power could be in the top 5. If so, wouldn't he be stronger than you? Millimeter, of course, he was stronger than I am. During the war back then, I had to avoid him when I saw him. Otherwise, my life would be threatened. However, that was back then. I am different now. The power in this universe is restricted greatly. My power couldn't be played and it would be the same for him. Even if I were to fight against him, I would not be afraid. The bronze statue's voice sounded confident. The beautiful woman in the white robe then let out a breath of relief. As he is awake, the others should wake up soon. Haha, it has been so many years and it is finally here. Haha, I am quite excited. I wish that it could be ended completely this time. Go and get ready. Ha ha ha, the bronze statue's hysterical laughter reverberated in the entire tower. The beautiful woman in the white robe bowed politely and walked out of the tower. In the darkness, all forces surged but Lineage of Star was at peace. Sanctuary Alliance came forth to mediate. The war between Lineage of Star and the two alliances couldn't continue. The rest of the time, Lineage of Star naturally needed to rebuild Starland. In the blink of an eye, 300 years had passed. In the 300 years, Lineage of Star had not only reconquered Starland, their power had also continued to expand. They had already covered a few lands and they had the power to influence in Purple Moon Sanctuary. As within Sanctuary Alliance, although it had only been 300 years, Lineage of Star had already advanced and leaped to become a major force in Sanctuary Alliance. There was no doubt that no other force in Sanctuary Alliance could compare to the power that Lineage of Star possessed favorably. Lineage of Star had more say in Sanctuary Alliance than before too. Even the great emperors in Sanctuary Alliance had scruples with Lineage of Star. Firstly, they had received news that Jian Wushuang had already obtained the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill from Emperor Bai. It was only a matter of time until he would break through and become an almighty. Then, he would be on par with them or even be above them. Secondly, they also knew that there was a terrifying super expert backing Jian Wushuang who could compare to Emperor Bai favorably, Emperor 13. Because of these two reasons, the great emperors, of course, had to take it easy. As long as Lineage of Star was not behaving wildly, they had to turn a blind eye and not bother with them. The tide rises, the boat floats. Lineage of Star naturally changed with an upward trend as well. In a lofty hall, the higher-ups of Lineage of Star gathered there to have a discussion. The one leading was, of course, Jian Wushuang, followed by the 3 hall masters and deacon elders who were on real god level. As for guest elders, they were only guests. They wouldn't be involved with Lineage of Star's affairs on a normal basis. Palace Master, we have just received news that a disciple of Lineage of Star had a brush with a disciple of Real Martial Art Divine Church when he was wandering in Dragon Fireland on East Royal Sanctuary. Both parties fought. At first, the disciple of Lineage of Star had the upper hand. In the end, a real god from Real Martial Art Divine Church took action personally and injured our disciple badly, Hall Master Yuan said calmly. Hearing what Hall Master Yuan had said, the surrounding deacon elders looked at Hall Master Yuan with a strange look. Fighting between disciples and suffering some losses were minor matters. Minor matters that not worth mentioning. In a normal situation, Hall Master Yuan could command any one of the deacon elders to take care of it. However, at the higher-ups meeting, Hall Master Yuan had brought up something so petty and reported to Jian Wushuang. What was he trying to do? Just as the deacon elders were extremely confused, Jian Wushuang on the throne suddenly slammed the table and stood up. There was soaring anger in his eyes. Real Martial Art Divine Church? Humph, the master of Real Martial Art Divine Church has already died and they are behaving so arrogantly. How dare they bully our disciples in Lineage of Star? They have guts. He Xiu. Jian Wushuang overlooked. Master. He Xiu, who was already a deacon elder in Lineage of Star, immediately stood up. Although Real Martial Arts Divine Church was in East Royal Sanctuary, Dragon Fireland isn't their territory. They merely have a few branches there. You bring 4 Dao soldiers and make a trip there. Wipe out the 2 branches of Real Martial Arts Divine Church in Dragon Fireland. I will let Emperor God Juyin hide in the dark. If the Almighties from Real Martial Arts Divine Church dare to make an appearance, Eliminate them all at once. Chapter 1933 The Promise. Jian Wushuang was raging with anger. Yes, He Xin immediately took his order. The deacon elders in the hall exchanged a look and they were shocked. It was merely fought among the disciples and their disciples had suffered a minor loss. It was a trivial matter. But in the end, Jian Wushuang ordered He Xin to bring 4 Dao soldiers and wipe out the 2 branches of real martial art divine church. It was obvious that he had made a mountain out of a molehill. However, when they saw the cold expressions of the 3 hall masters, they immediately understood. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang and the other 3 hall masters had intentionally made a mountain out of a molehill. They also understood the reason behind it. Real Martial Art Divine Church was one of the 5 forces in Star Extermination Alliance. They had nearly cornered Lineage of Star to death. Even though because of Sanctuary Alliance, Lineage of Star had agreed to stop meddling with the 2 alliances, the hatred was still there. Lineage of Star definitely had the upper hand. Even though he couldn't start a war, he had seized the chance to take revenge. For instance, it was just a trivial matter, but it was enough to become Lineage of Star's excuse. They wanted to look for an opportunity to deal with Real Martial Art Divine Church. They weren't afraid that Real Martial Art Divine Church would take revenge either. They even wished for Real Martial Art Divine Church to counterattack. The moment Real Martial Art Divine Church counterattacked or they had the guts to take revenge, Lineage of Star had no scruples and would pound at them. By then, even Sanctuary Alliance couldn't say much. As for what happened next, He Xiu rushed to Dragon Fireland in East Royal Sanctuary and wiped out the 2 branches of Real Martial Art Divine Church with thunderous measures. After that, He Xin intentionally stayed back in Dragon Fireland for a while as Jian Wushuang instructed. He waited for Real Martial Art Divine Church to find trouble in him. However, Real Martial Art Divine Church knew Lineage of Star's goal. Not only didn't they counterattack, they also apologized to Lineage of Star. Then, it ended. The forces in Sanctuary Alliance found out about it and sighed. Everyone could tell that Lineage of Star was making a mountain out of a molehill. They had intentionally picked on them. Plus, Lineage of Star had even wiped out the 2 branches of Real Martial Art Divine Church and killed many disciples of Real Martial Art Divine Church. But in the end, it was the master of Real Martial Art Divine Church who apologized. Sigh, they are not as powerful. It was merely a fight among the juniors. Isn't Lineage of Star behaving too barbarically? Barbaric? Are you dumb? Lineage of Star isn't dumb, but that derived from resentment. To your enemy, who is willing to let the opportunity slip? I think Lineage of Star isn't overboard. If I were him, I'd definitely do the same. Yeah, Lineage of Star is only barbaric to the forces from the 2 alliances. To forces and experts that share no resentment, they are rather peaceful. The Real Martial Art Divine Church asked for it as well. The forces from the 2 alliances, besides Abysmal Palace that has a great emperor attending garrison duty, which other forces aren't worried about Lineage of Star? Real Martial Art Divine Church bullied the junior by sending a real god expert to attack the universe god disciple of Lineage of Star personally. Isn't this courting death? All of the forces in Sanctuary Alliance was laughing about it. In the end, no one thought Lineage of Star was behaving ridiculously, but on the contrary, they found it right and proper. As for the barbaric stories of Lineage of Star, it was obviously unbelievable. After all, Lineage of Star was only barbaric towards the other enemies. Once they had found an opportunity or excuse, they would pound without hesitation. To the other forces and sects, they were peaceful. Both parties would sit down and talk about it if it were a trivial matter. In the blink of an eye, 200 years had passed. Lineage of Star had finally settled down. The forces that formed the 2 alliances back then had seen what had happened to the Real Martial Art Divine Church and they had learned their lesson. They held scruples with Lineage of Star. When they had come across any expert or disciple from Lineage of Star, they'd hide far away. If they were to cross paths, they'd hold back as much as they could and not let Lineage of Star stand any chance to take revenge. Then, Jian Wushuang had already left Lineage of Star and arrived at an ordinary holy kingdom. The name of the Holy Kingdom was Holy Kingdom of Demon Heart. The ancient silver spaceship shuttled through the dark void. In no time, there was a floating land. There's the old lair of Holy Kingdom of Demon Heart? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. The king of Holy Kingdom of Demon Heart was a Sir God expert that was powerful. Of course, a Sir God was nothing before Jian Wushuang. The purpose of Jian Wushuang's trip was to kill him. In the dim, secret room, there was a scrawny elder in black. He was cultivating. He was King Demon Heart. He was also the king of Holy Kingdom of Demon Heart. Over the years, he had ruled the surrounding holy kingdoms and he had a powerful background. Hence, he could march over eternal chaotic world unhindered. There was almost no one who dared to provoke him. He could be said to be a very relaxed and powerful figure. In his name, there was the word demon. His disposition was naturally very vicious. Legend said that the surrounding dozens of holy kingdoms would send a bunch of beautiful ladies to his old lair and they were all virgins. At least thousands of people and at most tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people. But there was no one who walked out from his old lair. One day, vroom, there was a sudden shake of prohibition that covered the secret room. King Demon Heart, who was sitting there with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. Who is it? King Demon Heart's voice reverberated in the secret room. Swoosh. There was a figure that appeared in front of him from nowhere. Real God. King Demon Heart was surprised and he already knew who the incomer was. I see. Sword Emperor came personally. Greetings. King Demon Heart bowed slightly at Jian Wushuang. Then, he smiled and said, Sword Emperor came today. I wonder what you have in mind. Whatever I can do, I'll do it for you. I came here today for one person, and also for a promise back then, Jian Wushuang said coldly. A person? Promise? King Demon Heart was confused. Real God Wu Bei. I wonder, does King Demon Heart remember him? Jian Wushuang said. Wu Bei. King Demon Heart's face instantly changed and he could instantly guess the purpose of Jian Wushuang's visit. The sixth step of inverse cultivation skill was obtained from real God Wu Bei. Back then, I promised him that I would kill you on his behalf when I had the power to. Today, I came to carry out my promise. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glistening as he raised his right hand. Sword Emperor, I am Great Emperor Zizus Man. Great Emperor Zi Shu owes me a favor, King Demon Heart said. Oh, yeah? Jian Wushuang's voice was cold but there was no pause in his actions. He knew about King Demon Heart's background. As he dared to attack that day, he naturally had no scruples. Chapter 1934 Spacetime Gap. King Demon Heart saw that there was no sign of stopping in Jian Wushuang action and he panicked. He immediately took out a token. Pack. King Demon Heart immediately smashed the token and roared, Great Emperor Zi Shu, save me. Jian Wushuang wants to kill me. The token belonged to Great Emperor Zi Shu. Theoretically, when a token was smashed, Great Emperor Zizus' consciousness incarnation should descend. Although it was just a consciousness incarnation, Jian Wushuang had to show respect when a Great Emperor made an appearance. At least, that was what King Demon Heart thought. However, he had never expected that there would be no movement at all after the token was smashed. There were no changes in the entire secret room. Great Emperor Zizus' consciousness incarnation didn't come? How is it possible? Why didn't Great Emperor Zizus' consciousness incarnation descend? Could Great Emperor be cultivating in seclusion? Impossible, impossible. King Demon Heart felt hopeless then. If Great Emperor Zizus' consciousness incarnation were to be second, he might have had a string of hope. However, without Great Emperor Zizus' consciousness incarnation, Jian Wushuang naturally wouldn't delay further. Jian Wushuang's palm rose and there was a resplendent golden light that appeared from nowhere. The golden light was the Hongjun golden sword. Die! Jian Wushuang bellowed and the resplendent golden light burst out. No! King Demon Heart's face changed. He knew Jian Wushuang was powerful and he also knew the terrifying Hongjun golden sword. Although it was only one Hongjun golden sword, it would still be like slaughtering a chicken to kill him. Sword Emperor, Don't kill me. I was only following orders to scheme against real God Wu Bei back then. Real God Wu Bei's death wasn't my intention. It was Great Emperor Zi Zus. Great Emperor Zi Shu wanted me to scheme against real God Wu Bei. King Demon Heart roared from the bottom of his heart. However, Jian Wushuang didn't bother about his roaring. The resplendent golden light didn't pause and spread at a terrifying speed and pierced King Demon Heart's skull. Before King Demon Heart died, his eyes were wide open and there was unwillingness on his face. Jian Wushuang stood on the spot and waved. Then, the Hongjun golden sword flew back next to him and he put it in Qian Kuan ring. Looking at King Demon Heart's cold, dead body, Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. King Demon Heart was really Great Emperor Zi Zus man. Rumor had it that Great Emperor Zi Shu did owe King Demon Heart a favor. However, when King Demon Heart had asked him for help earlier, he hadn't cared and he hadn't bothered descending in consciousness incarnation either. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Great Emperor Zi Shu, a super expert on the 5th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. Previously, Jian Wushuang had had scruples. Hence, he had never once attacked King Demon Heart. But then, Lineage of Star was at peace and he had many trump cards on hand. On top of that, Emperor 13 had made an appearance to save him previously. Hence, great emperors in eternal chaotic world had scruples. As a result, Jian Wushuang had no scruples to attack King Demon Heart. Before he had come, Jian Wushuang had already made preparations to deal with Great Emperor Zi Shu. Once Great Emperor Zi Shu appeared in consciousness incarnation, Jian Wushuang would continue to kill King Demon Heart. He believed that Great Emperor wouldn't fall out with him or even fight with him because of the King Demon Heart. But he had never expected that Great Emperor Zi Shu wouldn't even reveal himself. He didn't even descend in consciousness incarnation but had let him kill King Demon Heart. What is Great Emperor Zi Shu thinking? Jian Wushuang was confused. Besides, Jian Wushuang was surprised at whatever King Demon Heart had said earlier. The one who had schemed against real God Wu Bei back then wasn't King Demon Heart but Great Emperor Zi Shu? Was it a joke? A great emperor, why would he scheme against real God Wu Bei out of nowhere? Regardless, I've done whatever I promised real God Wu Bei. I already killed King Demon Heart. As for if it involved Great Emperor Zi Shu, Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. Forget about the fact that it was only King Demon Heart's comment alone, it might not be real. Even if it was real, I couldn't do anything about a great emperor. Jian Wushuang shook his head but didn't think further. He then turned to leave. However, he didn't know that at that very moment, on the boat that was drifting on the river at the estate that was like human paradise, the lazy man who was fishing on the boat, Great Emperor Zi Shu, was smiling. Jian Wushuang came personally to kill Demon Heart? It seems like it is because of real God Wu Bei. It's just Demon Heart. So what if you kill him? I will let you off the hook this time. I hope it ends here. The lazy man smiled and continued to fish. Just as Jian Wushuang was on the way to Holy Kingdom of Demon Heart to kill King Demon Heart. In Ancient Mystery Land. The Ancient Mystery Land that originally opened once every 5 million years and opens for 10,000 years each time, it still wasn't closing after it had reached the 10,000-year limit. As all the experts in Eternal Chaotic World were surprised, they were also filled with excitement. One should know that Ancient Mystery Land contained many opportunities. After all these years, there had been many experts that had gone into Ancient Mystery Land to look for an opportunity again. Emperor God Xiexin was only an emperor god on the bottom rank among all emperor gods in Eternal Chaotic World. His power was ordinary and he hadn't had much luck all this while. Ever since Ancient Mystery Land opened, he had been wandering in Ancient Mystery Land. Previously, when he had wandered for the given limit of 10,000 years, he hadn't received any good opportunity. But then, when he entered Ancient Mystery Land to wander, he had finally found a strange land after a few thousand years. I never expected that there would be a space-time gap hidden under the ruin. This is so secretive. Emperor God Xiexin's eyes were shimmering when he saw the space-time gap before him. The space-time gap gave him a feeling that it was like a space-time tunnel. He had no idea where the other side of the gap was. It might be a dangerous land, but it might also be an opportunity. He wasn't confident. Wealth comes from danger. Let's bet. Emperor God Xie Xin clenched his teeth. He had finally made up his mind after being in deep thought for very long. He moved and immersed himself in the space-time gap. He disappeared very quickly. When he appeared again, vroom, Emperor God Xie Xin appeared in an entirely different universe. Looking at the situation, he was still on an ancient battlefield. Emperor God Xie Xin wouldn't recognize the ancient aura wrongly. However, the ancient battlefield was obviously different from the ancient battlefield in ancient Mystery Land. The spiritual influence of heaven and earth here is so abundant. It's abundant. The intensity of it might be at least 10 times stronger than 10 cultivation sanctuaries. How could there be a place so filled with spiritual influence of heaven and earth? Where is this place? Is it still in ancient Mystery Land? Emperor God Xie Xin was confused. However, he knew that the place that he was at was definitely extremely different from ancient Mystery Land. Emperor God Xie Xin immediately started probing the surroundings. However, if he could put his soul power over everything around him, he would realize that he had come to another ancient battlefield. The ancient battlefield was much bigger and more spacious than the ancient battlefield in ancient Mystery Land. Plus, the battlefield was engulfed in a huge space-time storm. At the core of the battlefield, there was a huge, boundless skull that would shock everyone. At the core of the skull, there was a huge world. That huge world was Greenfire World. Chapter 1935 Hitch a Ride. Eternal chaotic world was boundless. However, 99% of it was boundless dark void. In one of the dark voids, an ancient silver spaceship was traveling forward slowly. There was a total of 4 people on the spaceship. The 4 people were Jian Wushuang, Jian Yi, maidservant Qiu Yu, and an elderly in green. The elderly in green was King of Venomous Worms. Although King of Venomous Worms was a plenilune living in the ancient god body, he could also take the form of a human when his power reached a certain level. They were returning from Holy Kingdom of Demon Heart. As they were rushing their journey in the dark void, boredom was inevitable. King of Venomous Worms took form of a human and he could drink and play chess with Jian Wushuang. Then, he wouldn't feel as lonely. King of Venomous Worms, when will my power of 7 stars recover? Jian Wushuang asked. In a long while. Back then, you only broke 6 stars, I went all out and it took 7,000 years until you fully recovered. Now that it's the power of 7 stars, even with my assistance, it will require a long time. Of course, if you were to return to your hometown, with the abundant spiritual influence of heaven and earth, the recovery speed will increase tremendously, King of Venomous Worms said. Go back to my hometown? Jian Wushuang was happy at the thought of it. Although everything in Lineage of Star has settled down, the dark sides in Eternal Chaotic World still aren't peaceful. However, with great emperors as higher-ups, I can't help much either. I'll go back after a while. To Jian Wushuang, Greenfire World was not only his hometown, but also a place that contained great opportunities. The attraction of the ancient battlefield in Greenfire World was much greater than ancient Mystery Land. Back when he wandered for 6,000 years in ancient battlefield, he had reaped great harvest. Then, as everything settled down and he had received the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill, he really wanted to return to his hometown to cultivate so that he could break through and become an almighty sooner. I wonder if Emperor 13 is still on the battlefield, Jian Wushuang muttered. About the mysterious ancient expert, Emperor 13. He had asked Jian Yi before if he had heard of the name, but Jian Yi didn't know. Hence, even then, Jian Wushuang had no idea about Emperor 13 at all. He only knew that he was from ancient times and he was powerful. Just as Jian Wushuang was casually chatting with Jian Yi and King of Venomous Worms. In the void in front of the ancient silver spaceship, there were a dozen figures shuttling in the dark void. These people weren't in a spaceship but merely flying with their power. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The dozen figures stopped simultaneously. The blue-haired lady who seemed to be the leader took out a star map. We should be here, in this location. There is still a great distance to the territory of Holy Kingdom of South Plume. With our traveling speed, We need at least another 100 years until we get there, the blue-haired lady said. 100 years. The surrounding people looked cold. 100 years was nothing normally. But, forget about 100 years, even dozens of years or a few years would be torturous to them. Their lives would be threatened any time. Just then. At the far end, there was an ancient silver spaceship plunging over. That is. The blue-haired lady was thrilled at the sight, such a fast-traveling spaceship, much faster than the one we were in before. It definitely must be a peak expert who could drive such spaceship. The blue-haired lady squinted her eyes and then she turned to order, "Wait for me here." Then, the blue-haired lady flew towards the silver spaceship. On the silver spaceship, Jen Wushuang and the others had already noticed the blue-haired lady and her troops. When they saw the blue-haired lady fly over, Jen Wushuang stopped the spaceship as well. "Qiu Yu, head out and take a look," Jen Wushuang commanded. "Yes," Qiu Yu nodded and immediately walked out of the cabin. "What's the matter?" Qiu Yu floated in the void and looked in the direction of the blue-haired lady. "May I know if the spaceship is flying towards Holy Kingdom of South Plume?" The blue-haired lady asked humbly. "Holy Kingdom of South Plume? Yeah, we would pass by Holy Kingdom of South Plume," Qiu Yu answered. "That's great." The blue-haired lady was happy and she immediately offered, "I wonder if we could hitch a ride. I'm willing to pay a high price." "High price?" There was suddenly a cold voice. Jen Wushuang had already walked out from the cabin as well. He looked at the blue-haired lady with a smile. At the same time, he also noticed the dozen people in the void. He smiled. "How much are you willing to pay?" The blue-haired lady looked at Jen Wushuang. She could feel the real god aura from Jen Wushuang, but she couldn't sense if it was void real god or eternal real god, or even chaotic real god. She hesitated for a while and she waved to take out a Chen Kung ring. "Please take a look." Jen Wushuang swept his soul power over the Chen Kuan ring and he was surprised. There were many resources and treasures in the Chen Kuan ring. He reckoned that it would cost up to 1,000 doctrine gems in total. To a real god, it was definitely not a small sum. She was merely hitching a ride, but the blue-haired lady took out such great sum that it shocked Jen Wushuang. The resources and treasure in the Chen Kuan ring is just a deposit. If you were to send us into the territory of Holy Kingdom of South Plume safely, I would thank you with great prices, the blue-haired lady said again. "Oh, it seems that you have quite a bit of treasure on hand. Aren't you worried that I would have evil thoughts at the sight of the riches and kill you straightway? Then, the Chen Kuan ring and every treasure on you would be mine," Jen Wushuang smiled. "You might not know. All my treasures are in the Chen Kuan ring. As for the remaining price, I could only realize them when we reach Holy Kingdom of South Plume safely. If you kill me now, you will not get the greater price at the end," the blue-haired lady said. "Millimeter, you're right. If so, come on board," Jen Wushuang waved. "Thank you," the blue-haired lady was happy. She immediately let the dozen figures that were waiting far away rush over. Very soon, these people entered the cabin of the spaceship. "Mister, look at these people. They seem to be on the run. We might have trouble if we were to take them," Qiu Yu said. "I know," Jen Wushuang nodded. He could tell long ago. If they weren't on the run and in a desperate situation, why would the blue-haired lady, who was only a real god, offer and promise such a great deal to hide them to escort? "I reckon that they saw that my spaceship's travel speed was extremely fast and knew that we are powerful. Hence, they came to look for us," Jen Wushuang smiled. "We have no need to do anything. Let them hitch a ride and we can earn some doctrine gems." Jian Yi and King of Venomous Worms smiled. Chapter 1936 The Luo Royal Family. To Jen Wushuang and the others, they really would pass by Holy Kingdom of South Plume. Hence, letting them hitch a ride was as easy as lifting their hands. As for the so-called trouble, it could bring them some fun and joy on their way. So why not? "Everyone, although I agreed to let you hitch a ride, you have to clarify the trouble that you are in to us," Jen Wushuang smiled. The blue-haired lady and the surrounding few people exchanged a look and nodded faintly. "Well." The blue-haired lady immediately started telling them the ins and outs. Jian Wushuang was listening too. Very quickly, he understood the entire story. At the same time, he also found out the identity of the people in front of him. The dozen people had great backgrounds. They were the royal disciples from Holy Kingdom of Sky Luo, a holy kingdom from the surrounding. Yes, royal family. Their tribe master was also the monarch of Holy Kingdom of Sky Luo. Originally, they were supremes in Holy Kingdom of Sky Luo. They were a definite symbol of power. However, not too long ago, Holy Kingdom of Sky Luo had gone through a drastic change. There was a major force, Soul Snatching Palace, that had attacked the royal family. Soul Snatching Palace was originally not as powerful as the royal family. No one knew where they had gotten the assistance. There were more than 1,000 royal disciples that had escaped who were all outstanding geniuses. However, as Soul Snatching Palace continued to chase after them, the number of royal disciples dwindled to a dozen after a few fights. Among the dozen people, the strongest was the blue-haired lady, Luo Feng. But she was only a void real god. As for the others, they were only universe gods. They intended to flee to Holy Kingdom of South Flume then. Holy Kingdom of South Flume and Holy Kingdom of Sky Luo allied through marriages over generations. The monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Flume was also the monarch of Holy Kingdom of Sky Luo's best friends. He naturally would take them with him. Of course, only on the prerequisite that they could reach Holy Kingdom of South Flume alive. Soul Snatching Palace is determined to exterminate we Luo family. Although it isn't too far away, we might be attacked by them. You have to be prepared, Luo Feng said. Soul Snatching Palace? Okay, Jian Wushuang nodded, but he obviously didn't care much. Luo Feng and a purple-haired youth by her side saw the sight and their eyes fixed on him. Soul Snatching Palace is impressive. You'd better not be careless, the purple-haired youth couldn't help but add. Is it? Jian Wushuang didn't say much. But he looked at the purple-haired youth in shock. He could tell that the purple-haired youth wasn't very old, but his gaze was deep. Plus, Jian Wushuang could see a hidden hatred in the depth of his eyes. The hatred should be derived from the extermination of Luo family. Young man, what's your name? Jian Wushuang looked at the purple-haired youth. Luo Tianhong, the purple-haired youth replied coldly. That's a good name. Don't worry. I'll dismiss Soul Snatching Palace for you, Jian Wushuang smiled. The purple-haired youth, Luo Tianhong, didn't say much after that. For the remaining time, the ancient silver spaceship continued forward. In the cabin, Jian Wushuang and King of Venomous Worms were playing chess while Jian Yi and Qiu Yu watched in respect. As for the disciples from Luo royal family, they were gathered there too, but they didn't talk to Jian Wushuang and the others much. Brother Tianhong, do you think we can reach Holy Kingdom of South Plume alive? A maiden in green asked timidly. The other disciples from Luo royal family couldn't help but look at the purple-haired youth Luo Tianhong. Although the purple-haired youth wasn't the oldest among the disciples, his power and talent were the strongest. Plus, he had been through the most. Hence, he was the most mature one. The disciples from Luo royal family had always viewed Luo Tianhong as their leader. Don't worry. We will definitely survive. Luo Tianhong comforted the disciples at his side and he smiled. Millimeter, I believe in Brother Tianhong, the timid maiden nodded faintly. After comforting the disciples, Luo Tianhong came next to the blue-haired lady, Luo Feng. Tianhong, what do you think of these few people? Luo Feng pointed at Jian Wushuang and the others who were around the chess set. Although I can't see through them, I can feel that they should be quite powerful, Luo Tianhong replied. How is it so? Luo Feng asked. Firstly, the spaceship is unusual. They could drive such a spaceship and it shows their power. Plus, they know that Soul Snatching Palace is powerful and could wipe out Luo royal family directly, but they didn't seem to care much about Soul Snatching Palace in their speech. I believe the experts who could drive such a spaceship definitely wouldn't be idiots that were blind. Hence, they definitely have reliance, Luo Tianhong analyzed. I thought so too, Luo Feng smiled. Actually, regardless of if these people are capable, we are in a desperate situation. We could only bet on this and pray that we bet on the right one. Millimeter, Luo Tianhong nodded heavily. They were really cornered in a desperate situation. There were originally 1,000 disciples, but they were chased after by soul-snatching Palace. There were only a dozen of them left out of the 1,000 royal disciples. Luo Feng was the only real god expert that was escorting them throughout their journey. With the remaining fighting power, they would definitely die if they were to come across soul-snatching Palace. Hence, they had no other ways. Helplessly, when they saw that Jian Wushuang and the others were on the spaceship, they decided to try their luck. As for the result, it was up to their destiny. On the other side, Jian Wushuang was playing chess with King of Venomous Worms. However, they were also chatting casually while playing chess. Of course, they had already sealed off the surrounding space-time. Hence, the Luo royal disciples wouldn't hear whatever they said. Jian Wushuang, I probed earlier. Among these people, there were some who had a special mark left on them. If not mistaken, it should be marked by soul-snatching Palace. King of Venomous Worms smiled. Millimeter, I know, Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. The master of the mark shouldn't be powerful but should only be a real god. Jian Wushuang naturally could see the mark easily. Do you need me to remove the mark? King of Venomous Worms asked. There's no need to, Jian Wushuang shook his head and smiled. There's finally some fun. How could we just let it slip? Plus, the mark is unusual. I'd like to verify who left the mark. Let's go with the flow. Chapter 1937 Recommendation. In the blink of an eye, a year flew past. In the past 1 year, Jian Wushuang and the troop hadn't come across any hindrance and the people from Soul-Snatching Palace hadn't barged in either. In the dark void, the ancient silver spaceship continued to travel forward. On the deck of the silver spaceship, a purple-haired youth wielded a saber. Quong, 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 quong. There were saber lights that swung out from his hand continuously. The saber lights were extremely brilliant and they brought along boundless hatred. Every single stroke contained extreme hatred. Die, die, die. The purple-haired youth had billowing murderous intention. The saber skills that he performed were definitely massacre-worthy. It brought about billowing hatred that would stop at nothing. Just as he was performing a saber skill, the entire void was engulfed in utter murderous intention and hatred. His saber skills were ferocious. The realm was shocking. The young man named Luo Tianhong is pretty good. In the cabin, King of Venomous Worms commented casually. Millimeter, has not bad, Jian Wushuang nodded faintly as well. For the past 1 year, although he hadn't spoken much with Luo Tianhong, he had seen the hard work that he had put in for the past 1 year. Different to the other disciples of Luo royal family, Luo Tianhong took painstaking efforts to cultivate and constantly developed his saber skills and improve his power. At any time, he would be thinking about improving his power and taking revenge. Using boundless hatred as motivation, just like when I was young, Jian Wushuang muttered. Plus, what shocked Jian Wushuang was that not only was Luo Tianhong hardworking, he was also extremely talented. Not only was his talent displayed with saber skills, it was also shown in his comprehension level. A universe god in the third heaven and he should have just passed the third god's test not too long ago, but he is already at the beginner level of massacre doctrine and his comprehension is ridiculously high. He has already reached the second level of Doctrine Palace. Jian Wushuang was surprised. The second level of Doctrine Palace. Even among the top 10 in Universe God ranking list, there were very few who achieved that. Luo Tianhong's talent was much stronger than many geniuses that Jian Wushuang had met before. Jian Wushuang, even though his lineal disciple, He Xin, was slightly weaker than him in terms of comprehension. It's a pity that Luo Tianhong isn't good at swords. Otherwise, maybe you could take him in as a disciple. Jian Yi looked at Jian Wushuang. Disciple? Jian Wushuang shook his head. If it wasn't necessary or he didn't truly favor one, he wouldn't take on a disciple easily. Although Luo Tianhong was talented and he might even be more talented than He Xiu, Jian Wushuang wouldn't take him as his disciples even if he was good at swords. Although I wouldn't take him on as my disciple, I could recommend him to a good master. Jian Wushuang flashed a strange smile. Then, he took out a communication token. Duan Lingfeng, long time no see. How have you been? Oh, the infamous Sword Emperor? What reminds you of me? Duan Lingfeng replied very soon, and he made fun in his reply. Haha, be asterisk starred. Jian Wushuang smiled. Duan Lingfeng was Jian Wushuang's best friend, a brother that was hard to come by. Back in real God Wu Bei's cave dwelling, Duan Lingfeng and he had gone through trials and tribulations together. Plus, their powers were similar then, and they were known as the top experts. The two of them were best friends, also an opponent that was hard to come by. They had been competing with one another all this while. However, ever since Jian Wushuang had broken through and become a real god, his power had instantly increased tremendously because of the advantage of being an inverse cultivator. Naturally, Duan Lingfeng was left far behind him. Then, Jian Wushuang was already at the top of eternal chaotic world. The 17th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, right below the great emperors and underworld god. Such power wasn't one that Duan Lingfeng could compare to favorably. After all, Duan Lingfeng had yet to break through and become an almighty. However, although he didn't become an almighty, Duan Lingdeng had already broken through to chaotic real god level. With his gifted talent and saber skills, he was listed as the first place in real god ranking list, and there was no other arguable match. That itself was impressive. Duan Lingfeng, I found you a great disciple. Would you like to come and see? Jian Wushuang asked. Disciple? Duan Lingfeng shook his head directly. My goal now is to break through soon and become an almighty, to stand side by side with you. I am not in the mood to take in any disciple. Don't refuse so soon. Come here and take a look at him. Maybe he's suitable for you. Jian Wushuang smiled. All right. Where are you now? I'll come over now, Duan Lingfeng said. I'll arrive at Holy Kingdom of South Plume soon. Hurry up, Jian Wushuang replied. Don't worry. I'll take a space-time wormhole. I'll arrive in 10 years' time, Duan Lingfeng said. After he talked to Duan Lingfeng, Jian Wushuang lifted the corners of his lips and revealed an interesting smile. The purple-haired youth, Luo Tianhong, was extremely talented from Jian Wushuang's point of view. Plus, he was good at saber skills, and his talent with massacre doctrine was unbelievably high. As for Duan Lingfeng, he happened to be good at saber and had comprehended massacre doctrine as well. In addition to Luo Tianhong's hard-working character and his temperament, Jian Wushuang believed that Duan Lingfeng should appreciate him too. If he were to miss the disciple, it might be difficult to find such outstanding disciple in the future. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang suddenly moved, and he immediately revealed a playful mocking smile. They're finally here? Right before the spaceship that Jian Wushuang and his troops were in, there were dozens of figures standing there in silence. The dozens of figures were all in black robes, and their aura were fierce. There were more than 10 real gods. The remaining members of Luo royal family is in front. A red-headed elderly squinted his eyes and he looked, hey, these rats are good at running. But no matter how they run, it'll be useless. There's a unique mark that I left on their bodies which they don't know about. From today onwards, Luo royal family will finally be wiped out. Next to the red-headed elder, there were a few figures in black ferocious masks. The few of them with masks had a cold aura, and there were faint massacre auras spreading from their bodies. Hearing what the red-headed elder said, the leader of the masked men said coldly, Don't be too confident. Ever since the remaining members of Luo royal members fled, we have been after them for tens of years and attacked them multiple times, but we couldn't wipe them out. I hope there won't be anyone who escapes this time. Don't worry. Previously, there were too many of them. The moment the massacre happens, they will flee in all directions. It is inevitable to have a few escape. However, it is different this time. Luo royal family only has a dozen of them left. There is definitely no possibility of escaping, the red-headed elder insisted. Save the bullshit and attack, the masked man said in a deep voice. Chapter 1938 The Crewer Formation. On the silver spaceship. Saber lights continued to sweep across. Revenge, I want to take revenge. Power, I am not powerful enough. The purple-haired youth, Luo Tianhong, had billowing hatred in his eyes. Just then, a crowd of figures in black robes swarmed over. Luo Tianhong immediately noticed and his eyes dilated in shock. Then, he immediately went into the cabin. Soul-snatching palace's men are here. Luo Tianhong's voice was cold. The disciples of Luo royal family and Luo Feng immediately stood up. Their faces grew extremely solemn and there was boundless hatred shimmering in their eyes. Everyone! Luo Feng turned to look at Jian Wushuang and the others with a pleading gaze. Don't worry, I will protect all of you, Jian Wushuang smiled. Master, why don't I take action and dismiss them? Jian Yi said. It's okay, Jian Wushuang shook his head, I'd like to verify something. Then, Jian Wushuang waved and a brawny figure in bronze armor appeared before everyone. The brawny figure was naturally a Dao soldier. Jian Wushuang had many Dao soldiers on hand. Although most of them were left in lineage of Star, he kept a few with him just in case he needed them. For instance, he wanted to send the Dao soldier into action then. The ancient silver spaceship had already stopped and among the dozen men in black outside the spaceship, their eyes grew solemn when they saw the spaceship. This spaceship seems unusual. One is definitely an expert to be able to drive such a spaceship. The masked man who was the leader pressed down his voice. Could it be the monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume? Humph. So what if he is the monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume? We can wipe out Luo royal family, so why are we afraid of Holy Kingdom of South Plume? The red-headed elder smirked in disdain. Then, from the ancient spaceship, there was a brawny figure in bronze armor that suddenly burst out. The Dao soldier in bronze armor didn't speak but straight away attacked the experts from Soul-Snatching Palace. D***it. How dare he? The people from Soul-Snatching Palace instantly raged and the red-headed elder even let out an angry bellow, destroy it. Hong, 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 hong. A few fierce auras exploded simultaneously. There was a total of 4 figures, including the red-headed elder, that greeted the bronze-armored Dao soldiers at the first instance. The 4 people were all real gods. The red-headed elder who was the leader was an eternal real god. When the 4 of them teamed up, as long as their opponent wasn't a chaotic real god, they could match evenly under normal circumstances. It happened to be among holy kingdoms but not 10 cultivation sanctuary. What were the odds of meeting a chaotic real god? They wouldn't believe that they would run into a chaotic real god by luck. Plus, the brawny figure in bronze armor before them was obviously just a war puppet. Just how strong could a war puppet be? They couldn't be bothered. However, when both parties were in a fight, the bronze-armored Dao soldier didn't know any massacre skills, only simple punches. However, the punches contain power that could compare to Sir Gods favorably. The moment the power exploded, the 4 real gods that barged in, including the red-headed elder, immediately stared. There was unprecedented fear from the bottoms of their hearts. They regretted it. But then, it was obviously too late, no matter how regretful they felt. The fierce power exploded. With one punch, the 4 real gods didn't even have the space to struggle but instantly turned into blood fog from the punch. The 4 real gods died instantly. What? Those from Soul-Snatching Palace who stood on the spot and saw the scene, were terrified. Even the 5 mysterious masked men, their faces beneath the masks were covered in terror. However, the bronze-armored Dao soldiers charged to them without hesitation after he had killed the 4 real gods. Humph! The masked man, who was the leader, harumphed and a chaotic real god aura instantly exploded. The masked man took a stride forward and appeared in front of the bronze-armored Dao soldier. Then, he punched. The bronze-armored Dao soldier punched as well. Both parties collided. It let out a loud bang. The masked man's body shook vigorously and there was blood flowing down from underneath the mask. War puppet at almighty level? The masked man was terrified and he instantly looked at the other 4 make men. Let's fight together. Use that move. The 4 of them nodded. Then, the 5 masked man instantly had blood fog churning from their bodies. The blood god concentrated and instantly formed a blood giant. The blood giant was about 3 meters tall and there was billowing flame. He roared and charged at the bronze-armored Dao soldier. The blood giant and bronze-armored Dao soldiers fought. Both parties' powers clashed and it was obvious that the bronze-armored Dao soldier had the upper hand. However, the advantageous position wasn't obvious. In the silver spaceship, Jian Wushuang and his troops saw the scene outside. When Jian Wushuang saw the 5 masked men let out blood fog and formed a blood giant, there was a chilly gleam in Jian Wushuang's eyes. As expected, Jian Wushuang's gaze became extremely cold. Previously, Jian Wushuang had felt a strange blood aura from the unique mark that was left on the disciple of Luo royal family. The blood aura didn't belong to anyone. However, the blood aura couldn't certify anything. However, when he saw the blood giant that the 5 masked men performed, Jian Wushuang's speculation was verified. The Krua formation, it is the Krua formation exclusively owned by Holocaust sect. These few, Humph, king of venomous worms, humphed coldly, and he had obviously recognized the few people's origins. Holocaust sect. That's right. The 5 masked men were no doubt experts from Holocaust sect. Although they were only 5 chaotic real gods and they weren't considered the highest positioned, there was no doubt about their identity. The assistance that soul-snatching palace got was men from Holocaust sect. Jian Wushuang was soaring with rage. His willpower moved and there was a resplendent golden light that soared up in the air. Under Jian Wushuang's manipulation, the golden light burst out. On the battlefield outside the spaceship, the 5 masked men already gave their all to perform the Krua formation. However, the blood giant that they formed could barely withstand the bronze-armored Dao soldiers' attack. Suddenly, a golden light flew over. These masked men, who were merely real gods, and also the remaining cultivators of soul-snatching palace, didn't manage to respond at all. Pest, 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 pest. There were deep noises that resounded. In the blink of an eye, the numerous figures in black floating outside were pierced by the golden light. The last remaining person, the masked man who was the leader, was left standing there alive. A huge hand appeared from nowhere and took the masked man into the spaceship. Chapter 1939 Abnormal. In the ancient silver spaceship, it was dead silent. The disciples of the Luo royal family were astonished. Even Luo Feng and Luo Tianhong, who were the 2 leading figures, were shocked. Although they were in the cabin, they could see what happened outside clearly. At first, they knew that the people who could drive such a spaceship were definitely experts. However, they were fighting against soul-snatching palace, especially the 5 masked men. Back then, the 5 masked men had attacked and wiped out the Luo royal family. Hence, they were terrified. But in the end, everyone else from soul-snatching palace had been killed besides the masked man, who appeared to be the leader. He was captured alive. Even Jian Wushuang and the rest had yet to reveal themselves. Merely a war puppet and a golden light, it took care of everything easily. Who are they? It stirred up a great commotion in the hearts of the Luo royal family members. However, Jian Wushuang didn't care about them. His eyes were cold as he looked at the masked man in the black robe in front of him. Although the masked man in the black robe was covered by the mask, he could tell from his eyes that he was extremely terrified. The golden light is too scary. Chaotic real gods didn't even stand a chance to struggle before they were instantly killed. The person who performed the golden light is definitely an almighty. The masked man in the black robe shivered in fear. He had never expected that he would come across an almighty when he was after the remaining members of the Luo royal family. Tell me, what's the relationship between Holocaust sect and soul-snatching palace? Jian Wushuang asked in a peaceful tone. The masked man in the black robe felt his heart skip a beat. He replied without many expressions, I offended Mr. by accident. Please forgive me. As for the Holocaust sect that Mr. mentioned, I have no idea what you are talking about. No idea? Jian Wushuang sneered, it was the Krua formation by Holocaust sect. Do you think I don't recognize it? The masked man in the black robe quivered and didn't dare to quibble further. The Krua formation was exclusively owned by Holocaust sect. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to see through the formation. Even out of almighties, only those who were more knowledgeable could recognize it. The masked man in the black robe had trusted in luck and thought Jian Wushuang might not know the origins of the formation. But then, however, as his identity was recognized, the masked man in the black robe didn't intend to say much. "You don't want to say? It's okay." Jian Wushuang smiled faintly and suddenly lifted his head. "Look at me." The masked man in the black robe looked at Jian Wushuang subconsciously. Just as his gaze met Jian Wushuang's, vroom, there was a boundless soul power that surged. The soul power instantly immersed itself into the masked man's head and violated his consciousness. Soul control. Jian Wushuang was going to soul control him. With his current soul power, it wasn't difficult to soul control a real god. The masked man in the black robe struggled for a while, but he resumed tranquility very quickly. "Master," the masked man in the black robe bowed to Jian Wushuang politely, and there was passion in his eyes. "I'll ask you something," Jian Wushuang immediately questioned. The masked man in the black robe was soul-controlled, and he naturally wouldn't keep any secrets from Jian Wushuang. Very soon, Jian Wushuang had got the answers that he wanted. "Soul-snatching palace is really involved with Holocaust sect," Jian Wushuang muttered. According to the masked man in the black robe's information, Soul-snatching palace had managed to wipe out Luo royal family and conquered the entire Holy Kingdom of Sky Luo thanks to full support from Holocaust sect. Then, Holy Kingdom of Sky Luo looked as though they were ruled by Soul-snatching palace. But in actual fact, Holocaust sect was fully controlled by Holocaust sect. In Soul-snatching palace's old lair, there were many experts from Holocaust sect. Among them, not only were there real god experts in masks, there were even people of Blood Demon level from Holocaust sect. Blood Demon from Holocaust sect was only a title. It represented experts of Sir God level. In Soul-snatching palace, there were Sir Gods from Holocaust sect, more than one of them. Of course, the masked man in the black robe that Jian Wushuang had soul-controlled couldn't be considered a higher-up of Holocaust sect. Hence, he didn't know how many experts from Holocaust sect were in Soul-snatching palace. That's strange. Holocaust sect has been in the dark all this while. Even though they control many forces in the dark, they have been extremely careful in their actions. Even if they need to refine treasures and improve their power to massacre, they would massacre the entire territory with thunderous measures and leave immediately. But now, Holocaust sect has helped Soul-snatching palace in action and conquered the Holy Kingdom. Although they are still careful and never reveal their identity as Holocaust sect, they obviously came into the light after all. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. He found the behavior of Holocaust sect fishy. Regardless, as Holy Kingdom of Celestial Fountain is controlled by Holocaust sect, I can't just ignore it, Jian Wushuang muttered and immediately took out a token. The token belonged to Purple Moon Emperor. Jian Wushuang sent Purple Moon Emperor a message directly. "Jian Wushuang, you said that you met people from Holocaust sect and Holy Kingdom of Sky Luo who were already conquered by Holocaust sect." Purple Moon Emperor was shocked. "Yes," Jian Wushuang nodded. "I find this fishy," Purple Moon Emperor muttered. "Hold on for a while." Jian Wushuang waited. Then, Purple Moon Emperor sent another message soon after. "Jian Wushuang, I just spoke to Ancestor Tian Chen. He also thought that Holocaust sect behaved unusually this time. Sanctuary Alliance has been dealing with Holocaust sect for so many years and they have never been so high profile. There is definitely a reason behind it," Purple Moon Emperor said. "I thought so too," Jian Wushuang said. "Ancestor Tian Chen said that you are also one of the members from Sanctuary Alliance. As you happen to come across this affair, he wishes for you to clarify this and wipe off all experts from Holocaust sect," Purple Moon Emperor said. "Sure," Jian Wushuang nodded and agreed straight away. Holocaust sect and Akron Palace, the two dark forces, were Sanctuary Alliance's biggest enemies. Jian Wushuang was also a member from Sanctuary Alliance. He naturally wouldn't refuse. Plus, as for the reason why Jian Wushuang agreed so heartily, besides the fact that he was a member of Sanctuary Alliance, there was also another reason. It was Leng Rushue. Leng Rushue, Lord Leng, was also a member of Holocaust sect. He wanted to know the whereabouts of Leng Rushue. It would be best to start with the experts in Holocaust sect. He happened to run into one and he naturally wouldn't miss it. If you were to run into any problem or trouble, drop me a message. And, be careful. Holocaust isn't an easy opponent. Purple Moon Emperor exhorted and then cut off their communication. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.